or from 6 to 6:30. We have District 2 and District 13 that is currently on. So if we can move them up, that would be great. And we can go ahead and get started. Want to start with, thank you so much. Welcome to the RWCA Candidates Forum, sponsored by the North Carolina Black Women's Empowerment Network, the North Carolina Black Alliance, Just to Serve, and we have representatives from the Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated that will be asking the questions on tonight. Again, we appreciate all those that are in attendance and those representatives that have taken time out of their busy schedule to come before this leg of the community to answer questions. Just for by way of instruction, candidates will receive 1 minute for introduction. They will receive 1 minute to respond to questions. You will each be asked 2 to 3 questions. You have a 30-second rebuttal and then a 1 minute wrap up. I'd like the candidates to know that each candidate will be asked the same questions and that each candidate is given an opportunity to send a 1-page document to the RWCA email address, the Trust and Believe NC at AOL.com, to be shared with the endorsement committee during the deliberation process. Again, thank you again. My name is Mariana Polk Stewart, and I am the RWCA Impact Chairperson. And again, thank you for taking the time out to address this leg of the community with questions as we look toward this general election and our securing our democracy. I would like to introduce our panelists for tonight. We have Marquita Mbonu with RWCA Impact. Diana Powell is with Just to Serve. We have Richard Moore, which is a representative from Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity. Cranston Artist, also a member of APIA, but also a member of the RWCA Impact. Thank you so very much, panelists, for participating on tonight. And I'd like to at least start with, I believe we have Representative Deborah Ross, and we'll start with District 2 with Representative Deborah Ross. 1 minute introduction, ma'am.
Hi, so Congresswoman Ross is on the call. I think this is her campaign manager, Emma. She may be under the other Emma Larson if there's a second one in the room.
We see her picture.
Hey, it says that the host has disabled my video. So can you all hear me?
We
Yes,
can hear
please.
you, Representative Ross. We
Okay,
can.
so I know you can't see me because when I try to hit the video, it says the host has disabled the video. So you can look at that pretty picture of me from when I was in downtown Raleigh this summer, unless you allow the video. But I'm more than happy. I love the RWCA and have worked with the RWCA for more than 20 years to work on racial justice issues, work on voting rights issues, and to lift up the African-American community, not just in Southeast Raleigh, but throughout Wake County. And my first interaction with the RWCA was when I was the head of the American Civil Liberties Union and worked on issues like redistricting, on juvenile justice, and also on racial profiling. And so many people from the history of the RWCA going forward have been good friends in the fight for justice. And of course, as many of you know, I represented part of Southeast Raleigh when I was in the legislature, and I worked on same-day voter registration at early voting sites and other issues of access to the ballot. And now I'm serving you in Congress. And I am on the Judiciary Committee. I am vice chair of the Constitutional Law and Civil Rights Subcommittee. I'm also on the Science, Space, and Technology Committee. And I am doing everything that I can to bring as much money, progress, jobs to Wake County and uplift everyone. And I'm particularly proud of the money and the efforts that I've brought to lift up Shaw and St. Aug's, which have a valuable history and rich contributions to not just Wake County, but our entire state. And so I have been a huge champion in the HBCU caucus for Shaw and St. Aug. And all I can say is that it would be an honor to have your support again. I've been endorsed by you in every single one of my general elections. And thank you for all you do in our community. Happy to answer questions. Hello?
So sorry. I was on mute, Representative Ross. I am so sorry. I did that whole dissertation. Now I got to say it again.
But you could hear me, yes?
I could hear you just fine.
Okay, wonderful.
I was saying I neglected to say when your time is up, I'll put my raised hand up to let you know that your time is up. But I neglected to say that. And so what I'd like to go to next before we go to questions is, do we have Christine Villaverde? And I hope I did not massacre your name, your last name.
I do not see them in the attendee list yet.
Okay, then we will go straight to our question for Representative Ross. And we'll start at the top with Ms. Mbola Wakita. Your question.
Okay, thank you. Representative Ross, if elected, what 3 policies would you prioritize and how would you work across the aisle to enact those initiatives?
Well, I love this question because I'm just a freshman in Congress, but I've already gotten 8 laws signed by the president, and every single one of them has been bipartisan. And so the number one thing that is facing people in this district and in the country right now is dealing with economic security. And that is a basket of things, everything from housing to healthcare to education costs. And I have promoted all of those things in a bipartisan way. As a matter of fact, I've delivered affordable housing money to Wake County, particularly for the homeless population. And I have money in the budget for more affordable housing. So we have to take care of those issues. I also voted and sponsored many of the provisions in the Inflation Reduction Act, which includes negotiating for prescription drugs for our seniors, making sure that those costs are capped. And then this is the harder thing on a bipartisan level, but we have got to make sure that we have equality and justice and voting rights for everyone. And we have done better in certain areas, but certainly not in the area of voting rights and not in the area of civil rights writ large. And so I am doing everything that I can to bridge the divides on those issues. I did that when I was the head of the ACLU, and I plan on continuing to do that in Congress. I don't know if somebody's on mute, but I'm not hearing anybody right now.
That's because me and my mouse are fighting, Representative Ross, and the mouse is winning. If I could have Diana Powell, if you'll take the next question, followed by Richard Moore.
Okay, hello, Representative Rouse. Hold on, let me get, hold on, I'm coming. Okay, the question that I have, can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. The question that I have, if elected, what 3 policies would you prioritize, and how would you work across the aisle to enact those initiatives?
So, Diana, I think we covered those issues a little bit in my last answer, where we were talking about the cost of living, housing, healthcare, and civil rights. And I have a record of working across the aisle, 8 bills, bipartisan, that have been passed. One of them, and so I'll use the opportunity in this discussion, is to make sure that more people in underserved communities have access to STEM education. And I've been doing a lot of work with Shaw and St. Aug's on that issue. But the most important thing is that whatever we do, it creates a path for our children, for the next generation to have success, to have economic security. We are doing a lot for our seniors right now, and I am 150% for our seniors. We have to make sure that every generation has prosperity and opportunity. And I am working very hard to make that so on the Science, Space, and Technology Committee and through my other committees and my other work.
Thank you, and I appreciate your response to that. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, Representative Ross. My name is Richard Moore. I have this question for you. What specific policies or programs do you endorse or pursue to combat inflation? And then if there's anything else that you could add with respect to what you see may be needed to improve the state of our economy.
Well, that's a great question. So we've done a lot of things to help with the aspects of inflation that we can address. And so the Inflation Reduction Act particularly helped our seniors. And, you know, our seniors are on fixed incomes. They can't increase the amount of money that they get every year from Social Security and from their pensions. So when we bring down their healthcare costs by negotiating with Medicare, by capping the price of insulin. I don't know if you all know, but 1 in 5 people in North Carolina has diabetes and uses insulin, and it's disproportionately our seniors. So to cap the cost of insulin at $35 a month is a game changer for our seniors. And again, one of the biggest chunks of people's where they put their paycheck is into housing. And I have been working on housing affordability. The bill that we passed in the House would increase the number of affordable housing. And then I have particular community projects in Wake County that will expand affordable housing. We have brought down the price of gasoline in a wide variety of ways. Gasoline, as you know, because it goes up and down, but medical costs and housing costs are about a half of what people spend their paychecks on. And Congress has done quite a lot to work on bringing those costs down. And that reflects the priorities that I had as your state legislator as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have Cranston Artist. He was having a few technical difficulties, but I think either he's asking his question either on his phone or in the chat. President Cranston, do we have you?
I'm here.
There, okay, great.
Yep, thanks for your patience. I'd like to ask a question to kind of dig into one of the topics you already addressed, which is housing. So with rent, property taxes, and home sales prices all increasing, what, if anything, should the federal government be doing to address the growing issues with affordability?
So there are three things that the federal government should be doing, and we are doing. We passed a budget through the US House that does these things. There are people who are chronically homeless, and those folks, the rising cost of housing, it's not even an issue because they can't even afford what we had 10 years ago. So we've got to help the homeless population. And again, I got special funding for Kings Ridge out by Wake Med that is part of solving the homeless population's problems. We also need to increase the amount of money that we give people for housing vouchers, because right now, as rents are going up, it's harder and harder for people to be able to use government assistance, and we have got to increase that. But the main reason why we have rising housing and rental prices is because we have not built enough houses, moderately priced houses, and enough apartments. So it's the law of supply and demand. When you don't have enough, the price goes up because people can jack that up. And the federal government, in this House bill that just passed in July, has increased the amount of subsidies for affordable housing to build it so that we have more. Because when we have more, people have more choices and the prices come down. And I have done that work for 2 decades. I did it as a state legislator through the Housing Finance Agency, giving them more money to have more low interest loans to build more housing. And I am doing it yet again as a member of Congress, because we simply have to have a greater supply. And that greater supply has to be near amenities, near schools, near transit, near grocery stores, not way, way out where people can't get to what they need.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have 2 questions in the chat, Representative Ross. Katisha, do you see them?
Yes, they're in the Q&A. I can read them.
Oh, please.
One says, can you share some of the upcoming initiatives for the Congressional Technology Committee? And are there any plans to address the ongoing labor shortages in the technology industry?
I love this question. Yes, yes, yes. So we just passed the CHIPS and Science Act, which, yes, make sure that we have more microchips produced in the United States and we're not just relying on Taiwan and South Korea for microchips. But it invests more money in sciences and education that has been invested since the moonshot. And the thing that I love about this, and I have an amendment that got passed and signed into law with Gwen Moore to make sure that underserved communities get access to community colleges, to HBCUs, to land-grant universities in order to get the education and have the pipeline that we need for all the jobs of the future. Because these bills and the infrastructure bill, they're creating the jobs of the future, but we do not have the people to be in those jobs. And these people could be everything from Black girls who code to moms who go back to community colleges and get retrained, to veterans who come back from serving our country and get trained for these jobs. But we just passed the biggest bill ever to do that. And it is going to be a game changer for Shaw, for St. Aug's, for Wake Tech, for NCA&T, where the president came and talked about it. It is going to be incredible. And we now have a new semiconductor program through Wolfspeed that is partnering with NCA&T to produce those semiconductors here in North Carolina and use our local talent. And that means everyone.
Thank you, Representative Ross. There was a second question in the chat, in the Q&A, that asked strategies to encourage voter turnout, especially among the young adults. Please discuss ways to increase this population during this midterm election.
Well, I saw that that was Henrietta Causey's question, and she knows all about this. I think that young people have been activated by 3 key issues this election, but we have got to go out and reach them and meet them, particularly the young people who during COVID were basically holed up in their room with, TikTok. And so we've got to reach them through social media in the ways that they want to be reached. But the 3 issues I've seen activating young people are reproductive freedom, so the access to abortion and contraception, climate issues, and then, of course, the issue of student loan debt. And I think the fact that this Congress has taken so many proactive steps, and the administration has, shows young people that they are being heard. But the key is that after 2 years of not having face-to-face interaction, we have got to reach them the way that they communicate. And that means, like I said, TikTok, online, texting, and then we have to go out and physically reach them where they are. We are doing that. I just hired a recent college graduate to work on my campaign. I actually have an NC State student who is taking this semester to work in my district office. We have got to bring them in and make them a part of what we are doing to promote change.
Representative Ross, we thank you so much for your participating in this live forum. Again, we encourage, if there's a one-page document you'd like to send, you've covered a vast amount of questions or opportunities that you have done and we've been given in the work that you've done in Congress. So we do appreciate the work that you've done. We appreciate you sharing with us tonight in this candidate forums, and thank you.
Well, it's my honor to be with you, and it would be my honor to have your endorsement. Thank you for all you do for our community.
Thank you so much. Next, we'll have, and I do apologize to Candidate Nickel. We will have Candidate Nickel for a 1-minute introduction. And then, and I believe he is under the name of Abby Katisha, to elevate up to the panelist. There we go, Abby May. Welcome, Candidate Nickel. We appreciate you taking the time to be here on this evening. Again, you'll have a 1-minute introduction and then 2 to 3 questions with a 30-second response to those questions. And we appreciate you staying on and being a part of this Candidates Forum. I'd like to go to Richard Moore with your first question. Oh, I'm sorry. Candidate Nickel, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks so much. It is an honor to be with you all tonight. I appreciate you taking the time, and really glad to have the chance to introduce myself to everyone here again. Wiley Nickel, I'm a North Carolina State Senator, my second term serving Raleigh and Cary in the State Senate. I'm an attorney, a former Obama White House staffer. I worked for President Obama during some of his toughest fights to expand access to affordable health care, and am now running for Congress in this new 13th district. It includes Wake County, Harnett, Wayne, and Johnston. And it is an incredibly important election. The democracy is on the ballot in this 50-50 race for Congress. Every vote is crucial and critical for us. And, you know, I said it before, but the right to choose and the right to vote is on the ballot in a way that we've never seen before. My main goal is to continue my work that I've done as a state senator, reaching across the aisle to deliver results for my constituents. The things that we've got to tackle in this next Congress, we've got to focus on the economy. We've got to bring down the high cost of housing and lower costs for healthcare. There's a lot we can do. I'm excited about rolling up my sleeves and answering some questions.
Thank you so much. We're going to have Richard Moore to start out with the first question, followed by Cranston, Marquita, and then Diana. Thank you so much.
Okay, good evening. Good evening, Representative Nichols. If elected, what 3 policies would you prioritize, and how would you work to work across the aisle to enact those policies that you would back and prioritize?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a lot of issues that we're facing. Number one, you know, democracy's on the ballot. So we've been talking from the beginning about passing the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. We got to make it easier to vote, not harder. I'm excited about working on those issues in Congress. You know, in a more larger sense, just about doing the work of working across the aisle. You know, the committees I'm interested in are agriculture, armed services. We've got Seymour Johnson in this district in Wayne County. Need someone to be there to advocate for that community and that base. And so those are that type of work is certainly much more interesting to me. We have a group in the House called the Problem Solvers Caucus. It's the only group of Democrats and Republicans in Congress. I'm going to join that committee and am focused on working towards the center, because that's what we need to see so much more of in Washington. On the other side of this race, we have a far right extremist named Bo Hines. So the choice is crystal clear on this, but housing is critical. It's critical for our area. You know, we are one of the fastest growing areas in the country. In Raleigh, rental housing prices went up 50% in the last year. That's unsustainable. We've got to increase our supply of affordable housing. We've got to expand the low-income housing tax credit, and we've got to prioritize individual home ownership by making it easier for owner-occupants to purchase homes rather than large investors that crowd out families trying to buy their first homes. You know, Congresswoman Ross made a great point about our home supply. You know, the data I've seen as well is really focused on getting more affordable housing by increasing our stock of housing for the people at the beginning of their life and towards the end of their life. So that means making it much easier to get first homes, and then for seniors to find senior housing. We don't have enough of either, and that's what one of the factors that's bringing up the cost so much for housing. We've got to bring down the cost of healthcare. I'm excited about some of the work that's been done in this current Congress to do that. You know, for those who get Medicare, we need to get hearing, vision, and dental. I'm excited to work on that in the next Congress as well. So there's a lot that we can do, and I'm excited to get to Washington to roll up my sleeves and make progress on these issues.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening.
Next. Go ahead. I was just saying, next panelist to ask questions, please.
Thank you. Good evening. So my question, similar to the question I asked Representative Ross, digging more into the housing piece, with rent, property taxes, and home sale prices rising, what should the federal government do to address, what more should it do to address this crisis?
We need to do a lot more, number one, and that's, at the top of the list when I'm talking to voters, about the issues that really matter to them in this district. And frankly, this new district, this is the growth district. This is where all the folks are moving. There's a ton of growth going on, but the cost of housing is just, pricing some people out. I think part of that discussion, we need to talk about raising wages. I think that's important, getting the minimum wage to $15 an hour. That's going to help some people, but we've got to increase our stock of affordable housing. We've talked about the low income housing tax credit. I think there's space to get into middle income housing tax credits. We certainly need to build more houses near transportation. There's a bill that I'm excited to work on, to do just that. That's going to help, bring down the cost of homes, and we've got to penalize these out-of-state investors who are buying so many homes and making it, bringing the costs up for so many people. So there's a lot we can do to make it easier for individual homeowners rather than these large out-of-state corporations. So there's a number of things we can do. I wish there was, one great thing I could tell you, but it's just, it's a shotgun approach. There's a lot of things we got to do, and part of that is talking about inflation. I think that's kind of part of that question. So that means investing in U.S. manufacturing, bolstering our supply chain, and cracking down on gas companies that are price gouging at the pump. Big oil, is doing that, and those are things we can do to help bring down costs as well.
Thank you so much.
Hello.
So we'll go on to Marquita. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hello, Senator Nickel. My question is, what concerns, if any, do you have regarding voter disinformation and voter intimidation at the polls? The North Carolina budget passed with a reduction of $3 million for the Board of Elections to do their work. How can we ensure all voters can access the polls and vote safely?
I mean, number one, that's one of the top issues in this campaign: protecting democracy, making it easier to vote. As a state senator, I helped beat back a bill that would have thrown thousands of legitimate votes in the trash. So because we have the ability to sustain Governor Cooper's veto in the Senate, we've been able to stop bad bills like that. So I'm proud of my work as a senator. I think on a bigger level, we are seeing a coordinated effort to intimidate people at the polls, and we've spent a lot of time as a country talking about encouraging people to be poll workers, nonpartisan poll workers. They're finding it so hard to get people to do that because you have so many people harassing them. In terms of federal law, number one, passing the John Lewis Voting Rights Act is critical. And number two, gerrymandering. We need to end partisan gerrymandering. It's crucial that we do that. And we can pass a bill that puts a nonpartisan independent redistricting commission in place on the federal level so we get fair maps and we have fair elections. This is a fair map. I'm running in probably the most fair district in the entire country. It is a 50-50 seat right down the middle. This is what maps should look like because they give everybody a voice, and you have elections where all the votes are critical and can make a big difference. So those are, kind of some of the bigger buckets of things that I think are crucial there. But, on the state level, I think it's important to continue pushing for legislators who support voting rights, because if Governor Cooper doesn't have the ability to veto bills, I am very concerned about the direction that a Republican supermajority would take to make it much harder to vote. And let me tell you, this is the same group who the court said passed laws that targeted African-American voters with almost, quote unquote, almost surgical precision. So the right to vote is on the ballot in a way that we haven't seen in quite some time.
Thank you.
Diana Powell, you have the last question for candidate Nickel. I do want to pause to ensure that I don't want to overlook if Bo Hines is in the attendees. Please put your name in the chat so we'll know that you are here. Otherwise, Ms. Powell, you have the last question.
Okay, thank you. Senator Nichols, my question is, what specific policies or programs do you endorse or pursue to combat inflation?
Yeah, a critical issue, number one, that means the things we need to do, we need to invest in US manufacturing. We've got to bolster our supply chains to get goods to market faster. And we've got to crack down on oil companies who are price gouging at the pump. But we also have to cut costs for families in healthcare, housing, and childcare. On the state level, passing Medicaid expansion is absolutely critical. Will bring down costs for everybody when you get over 600,000 people in the system. They say by as much as 7%. That makes a difference when you're going to the grocery store to buy things, when your healthcare costs go down. And for the 600,000 people who would get affordable healthcare by accepting Medicaid expansion, make a huge difference. We've talked a lot about housing. In terms of childcare, I authored the bill in the Senate that would have gotten 2 years of universal pre-K for our state, for every single, child in North Carolina. And the way we could have done it is just by keeping our tax cuts for profitable out-of-state corporations in place at 2.5%. The Republicans, are taking that down to 0% for profitable out-of-state corporations. If we just kept that money, we could get 2 years of universal pre-K, bringing down childcare costs. There's so many people. You're talking about $800 a month on average for childcare. That is so hard on most people, especially if you got more than one kid too. It's just unsustainable. So, one of my top priorities as a congressman in this district is going to do everything I can to bring down those costs for working families in this district.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anna.
Thank you so much, candidate Nickel. We are, again, want to share that each candidate is given an opportunity to send a one-page document to the email address to be shared with the endorsement committee when the committee deliberates on the candidates. So we appreciate the time and opportunity that you've taken to share with this leg of the forum, and appreciate your wanting to take the time to run for this seat. Thank you so very much, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks so much. It was great to be here with everyone.
Sure. Our next race is for the NC House, and I believe we have Ms. Lou, if I'm saying that correctly, Timothy Longest, Julie Van Hafen, Christine Kelly, Ms. Cynthia Barber, Senator Bone. If there's any other ones that are running for the NC House, please make sure that you present your name into the chat so we can recognize Mary Clayton. So if you will, and you'll be raised to the platform. Panel attendees, if there's questions that you have, if you will place those questions in the Q&A, and we'll have the opportunity to read those questions from the Q&A. I want to reiterate that you have a 1-minute introduction and then a 1-minute response. Once you see, if everyone can see my hand raised next to my picture, that means you have, your 1 minute is up. So I do hope, I do ask that you adhere to those rules. We're just taking a minute to bring all the candidates that are present up to the floor. Okay. It looks that all are here. I want to say my name is Mariana Polk Stewart, and I am the RWCA Impact Chairperson. Thank you all so very much for taking the time out to share with us on this evening, on this, of course, I say leg of our Candidates Forum. We appreciate you. And again, thank you for taking the time. You will have an opportunity here for a 1 minute introduction and a 1 minute response to any questions. I'll have my hand raised up in the corner, probably up and down several times to let you know that your 1 minute is up. And we'll take questions from the Q&A portion of this, as well as if Representative is as in the panelists, please let us know so we can elevate you up to the floor. And then we will begin this segment with a 1 minute introduction. And as you appear on my Zoom screen, we have Ms. Lou, and I hope I'm pronouncing the name right. If I do not, then please forgive me. Followed by Mr. Longest, Representative Von Hafen, candidate Christine Kelly, and then Representative Ball. Each start with a 1 minute introduction.
Hello, everyone. You hear me all right?
We hear you just fine. Thank you.
Okay, great. You pronounced my name perfectly. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
It's such an honor to be here. I'm really honored to be here with you all for this forum and to discuss important issues. My name is Yalu. Currently, I serve on the council, Cary Town Council, representing District D. It's west part of Cary. I'm running in House District 21. That includes all of Morrisville and west part of Cary. I campaigned on senior services, environmental protections, and infrastructure when I ran for council in 2019. And during my time on the Cary Town Council, those are the exact issues that I worked on. And these are the type of issues I will be working in the General Assembly, and will continue to fight for greater access to education, healthcare, and a clean environment. So in my district, there is a large Asian population. Over 40% of our citizens are Asian Americans. I'm really excited to have the opportunity to represent this growing demographic. So I will be the first Asian American woman in the General Assembly. I'm really excited about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lowe. Mr. Longest?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Just fine.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Tim Longest. I am the candidate for House District 34 for the Democratic Party, replacing Representative Greer Martin on the ballot. My district is in central, inside the Beltline, Raleigh, moving up to North Raleigh, just past 540. I'm a lawyer. I've had some experience in all three branches of state government, including Josh Stein's AG department, working with State Senator Jay Choudhury in the legislature, and on both North Carolina appellate courts, including currently as a law clerk to Justice Robin Hudson. I also have a record of advocacy for civil rights, having been an organizer around the UNC Center for Civil Rights at UNC, serving as a legal redress chair for a local branch of the NAACP, and working and serving currently on the Raleigh Human Relations Commission. If elected, I'm going to focus on advocating for working families, promoting public education, and securing our democracy and civil rights, including the right to an abortion.
Thank you. Representative Van Haven.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having us here tonight. I'm Julie Von Hafen. I currently represent North Carolina House District 36, which is in Southern Wake County. I'm actually running in the third different draw of my district because of gerrymandering. So this year it is all of Apex, New Hill, a little bit of Holly Springs, and a little bit of Cary. So my background, I'm an attorney, but the last 10 years before I ran for office, I was a PTA leader here in Wake County. I served as the Wake County PTA president, and I was on the state board for the North Carolina PTA. So of course, public school advocacy and policy work is like the number one thing I work on in the legislature. We need to obviously put much more investment in our public schools so every child has access to a sound and basic and full education. I also work on a lot of women's issues, including reproductive rights, the Equal Rights Amendment, paid leave, and Black maternal mortality policy in the legislature. And then the last thing I work on is a lot of environmental policy. I've been doing a lot of work around promoting electric vehicle use in North Carolina, and I look forward to continuing to represent my district for a third term after November. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Christine Kelly. I'm the Democratic candidate for House District 37, which is neighboring Representative Julie Von Hafen. This as well is a newly drawn district that encompasses the rest of Holly Springs and all of Fuquay, Willow Springs, Andrew, the rest of that Wake County's pie wedge. And it's important to know that this actually was a gerrymandered district, and it was just before the primary that it was made to be absolutely competitive. It's currently held by a Republican, and I'm running to make sure that we protect the governor's veto power and have another Democrat. So a little bit about me. I'm a mom, 2 kids. I've been here 30 years, raised my family here with my husband, love the area and have seen it blossom and bloom, but also understand growth and the things that we need. So because of those things, what I really want to advocate for in the legislature is funding public education. I've seen my kids be in public education, how they've had a great opportunity. So have I. As a PTA president of 2 of our local schools, I've always been involved in that area. Environmental programs, we are growing so fast down here. And I was on town council in Holly Springs for 4 years. And one of the first things I did was push for environmental protection. You can no longer clear cut in our area. And those are the things that are important for us to make sure that we keep our area for our generations to come in the best way. And then finally, because of the growth, affordability in the area, affordable housing is extremely important in finding ways, innovative ways to work to make sure that we give people a place where they can live, play, work, where they want to live. They can grow old here and downsize if they want to, just options, which right now is really difficult to have in our area.
Hello, can people hear me? Hello? Hello?
We can hear you just fine.
Okay, good. This is
but hold on just a minute. Representative Ball was next. And then
sure, no problem. I just want to make sure you could hear me because I'm having trouble with the equipment.
Perfectly. Perfectly.
Yep.
Thank you so much. Representative Ball.
Well, this is a wonderful honor to be able to be with you all, leaders in our community and leaders that are trying to make sure that we move North Carolina forward, especially for some groups of our citizens who are not being represented as they should be. I am in my 3rd term. I ran in one of those gerrymandered districts in a competitive seat in 16, was reelected in 18 and again in 20. I've held a leadership position in all 3 of those terms and proudly worked on legislation across the aisle as much as possible on public education. I worked really hard. I'm a mediator by profession, let me say that. And so I was determined, one reason I ran was I thought that we were missing the opportunity to work together in the legislature. I have been tremendously disappointed that that hasn't worked out that way. Those in power will not allow those of us who are in the minority to be parts of bills. They might sign on as a primary sponsor with you, but your bill is never heard. That's unfortunate. I hope we'll see something different in 23 by electing more Democrats. I hate to make everything political, but that is the problem. The Republicans will not allow the Democrats to have a say, and we need to protect the governor's veto. And I'm working really hard as the caucus campaign chair of our campaign chair for the House. And we are doing our best to make sure we get new seats, win new seats, and protect our current incumbents. And we're working very hard. It is a privilege to serve in the legislature. I work a lot on constituent services, and I am grateful for the chance to be here with you and answer some questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Representative Ball. Last but certainly not least, Representative Abe Jones, it is your turn.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Polk Stewart. Can you hear me well?
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay. My name is Abe Jones. Many of you know me. I'm finishing up my first term in the State House in District 38, which is the district I grew up in. Takes in Enloe and much of Newbern Avenue and Precinct 40 and some other places in Southeast Raleigh. And I've had 2 years in to learn a lot. We were just very, very busy in all of 2021 and all the way up through into March of 2022, and then back in and worked to July. So we worked very hard. And a lot of very important issues are going to be on the table next year. Women's right to choose whether they're going to have a child is going to be on the table. Parental, how deeply parents can barge into the public school system with their own agenda and force that on other people is going to be on the agenda. Also, probably some issues with respect to immigration even will be on the agenda. In addition, there will be issues with respect to guns on the agenda. And I look at my job is to try to listen to people and try to see how what their concerns relate to things that we are doing or need to do in the General Assembly. And so I invite your input to me, letters, telephone calls to help us. I look at this State House as I'm no longer a newbie, I've been there, but there's some things about the State House itself that I think could be improved, frankly. Things are run by small groups, minorities. If you've been there a long time, then you get to be part of those groups. If you haven't, then you don't get in the groups, but you can still present bills on the floor. And so I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that introduction. What we want to go to now, candidates, is there will be a questions from our panelists that have taken the time out to be with us on tonight. Each will ask a question. You will have a 1 minute response time. When that minute is up, I will raise my hand. And you'll have a raised hand. That means that your minute is up, and we'd like to go to the next candidate to be able to answer that question. All candidates will be asked the same questions, and we thank you for your responses in advance. We'd like to start out with Ms. Diana Powell will ask the first question, followed by Marquita Mbonu, Cranston Artis, and then Richard Moore. If you have any questions, attendees, please place them in the Q&A. I am seeing from the Q&A that it shows that it's disabled, but if you could place them in the chat, I'm sorry. We'd love to have those questions answered by those that are attending to our candidates on tonight. Thank you so very much for adhering to these procedures. And our first question will be asked by Diana Powell.
Okay, good evening, everyone. The first question that I have is, what do you believe to be the 3 most pressing issues facing the next General Assembly? What steps do you believe the state should take to address them?
Oh, I'm so sorry. If we could start with, we'll start with Ya, and then to Tim, I'm sorry, Mr. Longest, Representative Van Haven, then Representative Kelly, Ball, Representative Ball, and then Representative Jones. Thank you so much.
Yeah, the 3 most important issue that I see first is Medicaid expansion. I think it's so important to expand Medicaid. We haven't been able to do that because, Republicans' opposition. Hopefully, we'll be able to achieve that in the next session. I have my PhD in medical sociology. Very interested in the areas of healthcare. That's one of the issues that I think is hugely important. I hope I can make a contribution on. Second issue is climate. Climate change is real, and we need to invest in clean energy and fight against climate change. That's right by our doorstep. If we don't do much, and there's going to be disaster coming our way. And I have been a strong advocate on the Cary Town Council, championing for environmental initiatives. And so Cary we were able to get our first development with solar infrastructure in Cary. I'm very proud of that. And the third issue is protecting women's reproductive freedom. This coming year, like other candidates have suggested, it's so important that we keep the Republicans from gaining the supermajority. So we will hopefully hold the line, and we will be able to veto the bad bills that will be coming our way. And Republicans have made it really clear that they will, disregard women's reproductive freedom, and that's one of the key issues that I see very important.
Ms. Liu, thank you so much for your response. Mr. Longest.
Thank you. I'll start with where Ya was leaving off. I think that one of the most important issues we're going to be facing is a vote on an additional restriction on abortion access. North Carolina currently has a 20-week abortion ban. Republicans have signaled that they're going to pursue some further restrictions. So I think even regardless of whether there's a supermajority, we're likely going to see some bills introduced to pursue further abortion restrictions. And I think it's important that Democrats stay strong in sustaining Governor Cooper's vetoes of those bills. Second, I think public education is, a perennial issue in North Carolina. I think that we've seen a lot of disinvestment in our public school system. I think one of the most crucial areas we're fighting that is with teacher shortages. And I think part of attracting great teachers is making sure you pay them adequately. So, something I'd like to see is further teacher raises. And finally, I'm hoping we're going to have Medicaid expansion wrapped up before this year's out, but if not, that'll be, very important to resolve.
Thank you so much. Representative Van Haven.
Yes, thank you. We're probably all going to say a similar thing, so I won't repeat exactly what the other 2 candidates said, but I mean, of course, I would agree that I think, expanding Medicaid has always been our Democratic caucus's top priority for many, many years, and it will continue to be, because we know if we expand Medicaid, we allow people more access to healthcare, we lower the cost of healthcare across our state for everyone, and we protect all of our hospitals that are at risk of closing right now. I would also, of course, add that we have to continue to invest in our public schools. Our teacher pipeline is at a crisis point. We have so many thousands and thousands of vacancies and people are not entering the teaching profession. We are already at a crisis point and it's only going to get worse unless we take care of the problem. Finally, I'll just mention, of course, abortion access and making sure that we have that right is incredibly important. But I'll just mention something that nobody else has mentioned yet, and that's access and affordability for childcare. Because if we don't have childcare affordable and accessible to our families, our economy suffers. And right now, our childcare system is at a crisis, and we need to do something about it by making further investments and by paying our workforce. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It's Christine Kelly. I believe I'm next.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to start by saying I have a Bachelor of Math and I look at numbers and I make data decisions, decisions based on data. And knowing this area so well, this town, Holly Springs, grew by 60% in the last decade and Fuquay by 90%. So I have to really represent what's happening in this area. And that's where my priorities are: education. We're just busting at the seams in our schools, and to not have it properly funded and having the issues of paying our teachers and our principals well, staffing it with healthcare professionals to help make sure our children are getting the education they deserve by a constitution is really important. I also wanted to add climate change is important because we've seen so much growth down here in clear cutting and the disturbance of the streams, and just thinking that we can have an economic impact with the clean energy companies that are coming down here. It's a great opportunity for our state, and it's a win-win to preserve and protect our environment. So definitely championing things to help our environment. And then third, I wanted to add, because of the growth down here, affordability of housing and just affordability of things for folks to live down here. Longtime residents are having a hard time staying in their homes, and just looking at ways. I was on town council. I understand how we can do a better job with the legislature helping municipalities make more affordable housing in the area.
Thank you so much. Representative Ball.
Thank you for attending. Again to you. Again, I underline, as Representative Von Hafen did, that I agree with all the things that have already been said, so no need to repeat them. Just to know that we stand together on these issues. My top priority has been our public education system, from universal pre-K all the way through higher education, because we need to train our people who do not have the skills for the current jobs, retrain them. Our community college system is going to be essential in that. And we need universal pre-K because the most important thing to impact on the success in school is how soon a young person, a child, is receiving some education. I want to mention voting rights. I am very worried that we will continue to see, and depending on the makeup of the General Assembly, if we don't have enough representatives who will fight back, we're going to see a continued opportunity to limit the access to the ballot. And we need to make sure that we provide lower healthcare costs, that includes Medicaid expansion, but an affordability to live and be educated, so that our citizens will be ready to take those jobs and be able to live and prosper in our state, in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Jones. Representative Jones, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
okay.
sir, we can.
Yeah, here are my three issues. I'm going to be a little bit of repeat. My number one priority is protecting women's reproductive rights. That's going to be on in the state legislature and every legislature in the country. And we need to be serious about it and get it done. Needs to be put first. Number two is expanding Medicaid. We should have done it before we left. It was outrageous that they didn't do it. They waited for the elections, and that was sad and sick. And we need to get that done. We need to expand Medicaid. And lastly, is just an issue I have as a former judge. I'm going to propose a state assault weapons ban. Nobody seems to want to bail that cat. People keep getting shot by AR-15s. Nobody's doing a darn thing in Congress. Nothing. Can't get it done. So propose it, at least get some publicity for it. They'll vote it down, but I'm going to propose it. Those are my three.
Thank you so much, Senator Jones. The next question, I believe, comes from the panelists, Marquita Bonin, followed by Richard Moore, and lastly by Councilman Pettis. Thank you.
Thank you, and good evening, candidates. Thank you for joining us. So research has shown that high quality early education is critical to children's educational success. How do you plan to prioritize early education to ensure children in North Carolina are ready when they get to school, and that schools in North Carolina are prepared for our children? And I believe we're going in the same order.
We can go in the same order. Yes, thank you. Candidate Lowe, beginning with you. Ms. Lowe, you still with us?
Yeah.
There we go.
Do you mind repeating the question, please? I couldn't hear you. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Research shows that high quality early learning is critical to children's educational success. How do you plan to prioritize early education to ensure children in North Carolina are ready when they get to school, and that schools in North Carolina are prepared for our children?
Thank you. It's, as you suggested in the question, it's hugely important for every child, regardless of what income levels they come from, and to have high quality preschool education. They get a huge boost when they receive the high quality education very early on. It's just some families could not afford. And just as a parent of 3 young children, when our 2 oldest children were really close in age, they were 22 months apart. So I knew it's such a struggle for many working families to send their kids to preschool. I would love to work on some legislations that provide universal pre-K to every child in North Carolina. So every child had the opportunity to receive high quality pre-K education and give them a jump start. This is the issue that I'm very passionate about. I'm hoping that I can make a contribution in this area.
Thank you, Candidate Lowe. Candidate Lowe.
So I wholeheartedly support moving North Carolina towards a universal pre-K model. You know, that's something that this legislature has not achieved yet. So I won't add very much to what y'all said, except to say that I think that it needs to be as comprehensive a system as possible. We need to be considering not just 4-year-olds going into getting ready for kindergarten, but even earlier than that, because investments in education made earlier in a child's life will make a bigger difference down the road.
Thank you.
So childcare, you know, honestly, like Tim said, starts at prenatal care. And so we have to really think about our education system from prenatal to 12, not K to 12. And I think that starts honestly with infant toddler care and talking about childcare. And I filed many bills in the last few years to make childcare more available to our families. We have a big problem in North Carolina. We have 99 out of our 100 counties qualify as childcare deserts, which means that there are about 5 infant toddlers waiting for a chance to receive care in these situations. And we have 10 counties that are extreme childcare deserts. So one way we can resolve this is to adjust our childcare subsidy rates, because we have over almost 20,000 children that are on a child care subsidy waiting list right now. And so that lack of available childcare is really hurting our children and making them put in situations where they're not prepared to go to school when they're ready to do so, into kindergarten. And so we have to make sure that they're able to get these options, and that we need to do that by investing in these childcare subsidies, raising the subsidy rates, which will help the providers remain open, keep costs down, raise wages for our workers, and then open those slots for those 20,000 kids.
Thank you so much.
It's Christine Kelly again. So one of the things that I strongly believe is funding public education, and following the Leandro plan, there's also another plan called the West Ed plan that is very prescriptive on the things that we need to do. And it does highlight that we need high quality early childhood education. That's what's so frustrating, is this has all been laid out, and it's just having the General Assembly move forward and support it. But it talks about increasing the pipeline, educator pipeline for early childhood, make sure that those folks are there. Also to make sure that the Smart Start programs are available. I mean, let's face it, many parents are single parents. During COVID, we saw the impact of not having access to childcare, and it impacted companies. And it's just a fundamental thing that we need to make sure that we implement, so that we take care of our children from, as the other representatives have been saying, from early, toddlers all the way up, because companies are moving here because they love our education. Well, that means that we have to fund it the whole way through.
Thank you so much. Representative Ball.
As I stated in my opening statement, we need universal pre-K, and thank you for asking us to elaborate on that. It is the greatest return on investment that we can make with the taxpayers' dollars to fund education as young as possible, allowing those young people to be exposed to the education that will help them throughout their lives. We have huge waiting lists, and frankly, we have the funds to do this. There was a huge amount of money, I think it was about $6 billion, put in our rainy day fund. We had the money, and we will continue having the money because tax cuts from us to the large corporations are going to go down, meaning we're going to have less revenue, but we need to give our families, working families, more tax breaks, and we need to address the inequities in our tax structure. I could go on, but I know my time's probably up.
Yes, ma'am. Representative Jones, we have 1 minute. Representative Jones. There we go.
Can you hear me now? Okay. I was saying the primary thing I think we need to do right away is get some publicity for this issue. Everybody talks about education, they act like they're for it. You ask anybody down there, say, before education. So we have to put some meat on the bones on this early childhood thing before grade school. And that we have to get on a specific program and have a press conference and talk about it. That's my 2-cent worth.
Thank you, Representative Jones. Mr. Moore with the next question, followed by Mr. Artis.
Okay, to each one of our candidates who are here this evening, what do you believe are the most pressing issues with respect to the facing the North Carolina economy, and include not just include inflation and all of that, but also include any ideas or pressing issues with regards to business development, small business development?
If we could begin this time with Representative Jones, followed by Representative Ball, Kelly, Von Haven, Tim Longest, and then candidate Lou.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I I think it's a tough area because we generally look to the federal government to help small businesses. They have the SBA, Small Business Administration. So I think the first thing we need to do is get the state to kick in, and everything comes down to money. And so I'd be willing to work with you specifically if you had an idea about putting a bill forward to get financing for it. That's where it would have to start. And then we can figure out what the criteria should be and sort of track what the small SBA has done. No need to reinvent the wheel. That would be my short answer. And I'm sure there's a lot more you know about it than I do, but that's what I think.
Thank you.
I believe I'm next, and thanks for the chance to answer that question. I think the most pressing issue we have in North Carolina is the huge gap between the wealthy and privileged individuals and those who are not so fortunate. The gap is getting wider and wider. The tax structure is reinforcing that. And we need to do a lot of things to incentivize small businesses, because that is the foundation on which our state has been successful over the years. We also need to train people in those skills so that they can start their own business. And I hope we will make some progress in that regard, because I believe that has come to be a little bit more of a bipartisan issue. I hope so. Thank you.
This is Christine Kelly. I love this question because I grew up, my family had a small mom and pop hotel restaurant. So, you grow up and you know how hard it is to make payroll and get inventory. But I now get to work for a big company and was on the town council, and we brought big companies. So there's a balance, right? If for every MGM we bring in, it helps fuel other small businesses around the area and helps build the whole economy. So we need to balance and make sure that for those small businesses, it's easier for them to get started, right? Like how easy is it for them to get access to funding or grants, or particularly minority-owned businesses, just to make sure that we balance out the wealth of small and the large corporations, because we lift everybody up, everybody will be better for it. And I just want to add, I think that it's terrible that for the corporate tax is going to zero, because that's really how we could fund some of the programs we're talking about, like early childhood education in the schools. And so I really think that needs to be revisited, because that's a free ride for companies that I think would be happy to pay, because they want good education, they want good infrastructure. Well, then they needed to invest in it, and having them have a free ride with the corporate tax going to zero, to me is going the wrong direction and not helping the folks we need to.
Okay, I think I'm next, I think. I would just say, that I think the question was, what is, one of the top economic issues that's facing North Carolina? And I would honestly think it's housing. I mean, living in Wake County, we're one of the fastest growing populations, but our wages and our housing, stock is not keeping up with that. And we really have to take some steps, whether it's at the state level or the local level, to accommodate, all these people that are coming into our state. I think that we can do that in several ways. We've got to increase, our workforce housing by, making sure that we're investing in multi-use property, which can help small businesses. These buildings that accommodate both commercial and residential, I think are really important, because they, make space more efficient. They help revitalize, downtown economies, and they diversify the tax base for our local communities. And I think that, investing in multi-use building projects like that can both help small businesses and also, improve workforce housing stock.
There are 3 ways I can think we can help encourage businesses to start and come to North Carolina. First, I think we need to move away, as I think Representative Ball was alluding to, the regressive tax scheme that Republicans have implemented the last decade, one that balances our budget on the backs of poor and middle income consumers through a sales tax. I think that discourages the very behavior we're hoping to encourage in getting folks to buy goods here in North Carolina. Second, I think we need to adequately fund the transportation plan that the Department of Transportation has laid out, that would move us toward a multimodal transportation system in North Carolina by year 2040, I think we can make a lot more progress there. And finally, we need to adequately fund our higher education system. That's how we began building, bringing businesses and building a world-class economy last century. That's how we're going to continue to do it this coming century.
I agree with all that have been said by other candidates and elected officials on this topic. North Carolina, our state, has been very fortunate. We are able to attract many large corporations making huge investments in our state. And I have talked to business leaders, and they agree that corporations, they just need to pay their fair share. Now more, probably just the same as regular citizens, what we pay for tax, right? So cutting, giving them tax break doesn't make sense. And taking that money and investing in our schools, investing in training our workforce is just so important for our state, for the future of our state.
Thank you. Our last question, Mr. Artis.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, and if we can follow back with Ms. Liu starting, followed by Ms. Longest, Representative Van Haven, Kelly, Ball, and Jones. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So some have already spoken to this, but I wanted to ask specifically, in support of recent legislation passed in Congress to address climate change, what do you propose at the state level to support that legislation to further address climate change in North Carolina?
And I'm just so excited that we were able to, the Biden administration was able to deliver this for us. And this is more like a federal issue. But at the state level, I think it's just whatever we can do or whatever investment we can have for clean energy to support electric vehicle infrastructure we have that incentive to encourage more people to buy electric vehicles, but at all levels of government, it's just so important to provide incentives for businesses, for citizens to buy electric vehicles, and provide incentives for our development community, for them to be environmentally conscious for every development they have. It's just very important. So whatever we can do to invest in green infrastructure, that'd be great.
Obviously climate change is, the greatest avertible disaster that we're facing, and it's something that's already happening in North Carolina. We're already experiencing the consequences of, extreme weather events. I think that the two main ways North Carolina can help tackle climate change, obviously we can't solve it on our own, are first to invest in precisely the kind of transportation system I was talking about that includes significantly expanding mass transit options, including rail and buses. Because car emissions is the #1 contributor to climate change in North Carolina. And second, we need to revamp our energy system that includes opening up more access to wind energy and other alternative and cleaner energy sources.
I'll echo. I think again, the other candidates' remarks. I mentioned at the beginning that I've actually been working on a lot of electric vehicle legislation since I came to the legislature, and got a bill passed through the House this year. Died in the Senate, but that's normal in the legislature. But we'll continue to work to, promote the use of electric vehicles, making sure that our infrastructure is keeping up, because we know that electric vehicle sales are increasing dramatically in North Carolina, and there's other things that we can do, including direct sales, which I've been working on kind of behind the scenes, and we're going to continue to have those conversations. We want to make sure there's also equitable access to electric vehicles and to transportation. We know that, most electric vehicle drivers right now are in higher income areas, and they have access to the charging that they need. And so we need to make sure that that's equitable to everyone in our state. Again, like the other candidate mentioned, we have, such a great opportunity for wind here in North Carolina with our coast. And the one thing we need to make sure is that we're training our future workforce in this industry. I think we've kind of been lagging behind on that. And I'm hoping with the federal infrastructure bill that we can continue to make sure that our community colleges and our institutions of higher learning are training our workforce to go into these fields, especially when the building of wind equipment and all the things that we're going to need as our ports transition in the next decade. Thank you.
It's Christine, and I love this question just because it's one of the major things that I think I'm so thrilled that we're getting greener in terms of the direction of the plans that Governor Cooper wants to do, which will help us bring green jobs. Being on town council, I think there's a great opportunity to work with the Home Builders Association and other groups just to help them understand and sensitize them to say, when you're putting up buildings, start out of the gate with the right EV stations in place. Because right now you have to almost fight for those things. So I think from the legislature level, we can help to do that. And that could make a big difference in terms of adoption period. The other thing I think it's important to fund is recognize that we do have issues with climate that has already in our areas in terms of water. Fully fund the agencies that are going to make sure that we look for PFAs and how bad is it, and really make sure that we account for what has happened so we can change the direction and hopefully even put programs in place to fix. Because I'm close to a landfill and I did a lot of work to try to figure out how to make it better. And sometimes it's just looking at the problem in a different way and just recognizing, we need to do a better job. So funding the groups that can help take care of our environment, but also making sure we lift up more green jobs. And yeah.
I believe I'm next. Too often in the 6 years I've been serving, we've had some pretty good pieces of legislation that have come forward, fairly bipartisan, but as they move from committee to votes, they get watered down and turn out to be very much anti-environment. I've seen that too often. We need sustainability and equitability in what we do. I believe Mr. Longest mentioned multimodal transportation. That's key. We need a transportation system and the zoning that goes along with that to place our people near the opportunity to take something other than their car to work. We haven't mentioned this yet, but broadband, I know that's not what the question was about, but I want to make sure I raise that. We have some problems in broadband all across our state. It's not just in Eastern North Carolina and in Western North Carolina. It is in Wake County that we have some gaps, that people do not have a fair access to the internet, and we need to do something about that. Just want to throw that in. Thank you.
I guess it's I'm the last one, my turn. I agree with everything people have said. I think once again, though, one of the problems we have is getting public education on this issue. I think a lot of people, regular people out there, look at it as kind of a egghead issue that, it's a bunch of tree huggers and all this foolishness that people talk. And I think people need to be made aware that this is a imminent threat now. It's not something for 30 years down the road or 20 years down the road. We have to stop polluting the air now. We have to stop polluting the water now. Then this is why. This is what's going to happen if we do not do it. And we have to work together. And so we kind of have to educate before we can ask, because the regular people out there just think it's a lot of people just think it's a bunch of hooey. I get magazines and stuff and I read about it, but not many people do that. I'm sure Julie does and other people on this panel, but we got to educate a lot and make it a regular issue, not just something specialists look at. That's my opinion.
Thank you so much, Representative Jones. And for each one on the panel, for our representatives that are currently serving, and those who have a desire to serve the residents of North Carolina. We appreciate the time and the effort that you give each and every day, whether it's going in to try to bring the common good of the whole to the floor in hopes that everyone will have that thought process or the desire to go to the floor in hopes that we can ensure that everyone has a right to, has a constitutional right to everything that is listed. So again, from the RWCA and our collaborative partners, thank you so very much for your service in helping to make North Carolina even greater than what it is today, and ensure that the strides that we have come, we don't go backwards, we don't take a step back, that we continue forward for those that are looking for us to prepare this future. We thank you for your time again. Again, we offer the opportunity that if it was something that when you go away from this forum, that there's something that I thought, oh my, I wish I would have brought that up, you can send a one-page document to the email address to be shared with the endorsement committee when we deliberate on next week. Again, thank you so much for your attention and your time tonight.
Thank you.
For the panelists that are here, we are about an hour early for the NC courts, but we are going to elevate those that are present to the floor, and we'll go through our process. We'll go through our question and answer process through those that are present so as not to hold them. And I think we only have 2 that are not on the line, but they're not scheduled until 8:30. And so in all fairness, we don't want to hold those that are out here any longer than we have to, because we appreciate their time and opportunity to come speak with us on tonight. But we do want to hold, as soon as we finish with this group, we do want to hold it open for those that send in an email that they would attend, but they're not scheduled until 8:30. So with that being said, we thank those that are here, which is Judge Inman and Irvin, Gill, Murray, Adams, for attending our Candidates Forum on tonight. My name is Mariana Polk Stewart, and I am the chair of the RWCA Impact. And I have with the panelists on tonight, our Impact panelists, or our panelists for this is Joaquina Mbonu, along with, which serves on the Impact, Cranston Artist, Diana Powell, and Richard Moore, who serves or represents Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Diana Powell, who serves as the president and CEO of Justice Serve. Thank you so much for attending on tonight. And then the North Carolina Black Alliance for providing our Zoom and our technical pieces in order to have this Zoom going forward. You will have a 1-minute introduction, after which each one of the panelists will ask a question. Everyone will have the same question. You'll have a 1 minute to respond. Once you get to that 1 minute, you will see my hand raised in my box. That means your 1 minute, as you are at your 1 minute mark. And after which, we'll go to the next candidate. We'll start out with introductions, beginning with Judge Inman, and then Irvin, and then Adams. We'll start our questions off with Ms. Mbonu, followed by Richard Moore, Cranston Artist, and Diana Powell. And we'll start. Thank you again so much. We'll start with our 1 minute introductions.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. Thank you very, very much for hosting all of these candidate forums. I wish every voter had access to these kinds of programs because it's so important for people to know who their candidates are. My name is Lucy Inman. I'm a judge on the North Carolina Court of Appeals. I grew up in Raleigh and went to great public schools in Raleigh, then graduated from NC State University with an English degree and worked as a newspaper reporter covering courts. I realized that I wanted to participate in our justice system, and I went to law school in Chapel Hill. My first job out of law school was clerking at the North Carolina Supreme Court, which is really at the opposite end of most people's experience in court. And I practiced law for 18 years and then served as a Superior Court judge for 4 years. I was so happy to have heard Representative Abraham Penn Jones earlier because I served as a Superior Court judge with him. I am running for the Supreme Court this year for an open seat to continue my service to our state and to protect our state Supreme Court from partisan politics that threatens the independence of each justice and the integrity of that court. The courts are responsible for protecting everyone's rights conferred not only by the federal constitution, but by the North Carolina state constitution. If our judiciary becomes just another partisan branch of government, we would lose the conscience of our democracy and the stability provided by the rule of law and respect for precedent. As everyone knows, more this year than ever, our Supreme Court affects the lives of everyone, even if they never go to court. And I look forward to answering your questions this evening. Thank you so much for having me.
Right, I think I'm next. I'm Sam Irvin IV. I'm an Associate Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court, and I'm running for re-election. I want to join Judge Inman in thanking you for having us this evening. I have enjoyed participating in functions put on by the RWCA and the others that are with us this evening, and I'm glad to have the opportunity to talk about my candidacy for re-election for a few minutes. I am a native of Morganton, North Carolina, in the western end of the state. I still live there. I'm a product of the public schools in Burke County. I got my college education at Davidson College and my law degree at Harvard. I practiced law in Morganton for 18 years, did all kinds of cases during my private practice, joined the Utilities Commission, which is a quasi-judicial body that regulates privately owned utility companies, and spent almost 10 years as a member of that body. Was elected to the Court of Appeals in 2008, served on the Court of Appeals for 6 years, and then was elected to the Supreme Court in the 2014 election, and have been on that court ever since. I'm seeking re-election to my second term. I very much enjoyed being on the court and look forward to serving the citizens of the state in the future. The courts in this state this year are at a crossroads, it seems to me. We have a choice. We can have courts that are fair, that are impartial, that treat everybody equally, respect the rights of all folks, give all people a chance to be heard, or we can have courts that are basically a political institution. I have tried for my entire judicial career to be a fair and an impartial judge of the type that I've described. I'm very opposed to the notion of courts becoming just another political institution, and decided to run for re-election this year out of concern that that's where we were headed. I look forward to your questions. Again, thanks for having us this evening.
Thank you so much, Judge Irving and Ms. Adams. And we do have a 1-minute introduction.
All right, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, my name is Gail Adams and I'm running for the North Carolina Court of Appeals. Thank you all so much for this opportunity. Just to tell you a little bit about me, I'm a country girl from Warren County, raised by a single mother of 4. I graduated from UNC Chapel Hill and from North Carolina Central University School of Law before joining the United States Navy as a Judge Advocate General. After I proudly served my country, I worked as an assistant district attorney and as an assistant federal public defender. In 2012, I was elected to serve as a Superior Court judge in Cumberland County. I have been married 37 years. I have 4 children. I've also worked as served as a licensed foster parent for many years. My husband and I'm active in the community. I attend church where I work with the youth, and I also teach Sunday school. My main point that I want to emphasize is that judges are important. We affect your lives from before you are born until after you die. And so you need judges who understand the role that we play and how important our role is on the lives of everyday people. I believe judges should follow the law. They should be fair and impartial, and they should treat people with dignity and respect. And that is what I pledge to do. And I thank you again so much for this opportunity.
Thank you to each of you. And will panelists, if you're ready for your questions, we can go right into them. And judges, you each have a minute to respond. Each one will be asked the same question. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So my question is, do you believe that all citizens have adequate access to legal help and the legal system? If not, what can be done to provide wider and better access?
Would you like me to start?
Sure.
Okay, sure. Great. I do not believe that every North Carolinian has access to legal representation in our justice system. And I think that the fundamental answer to that problem is that we need more funding for our courts. People might think that the fines and the court costs that they pay into the courts fund the court system, but actually the courts have to give all of that money to our general budget, and the legislature has to allocate money for our justice system. We have appointed counsel for criminal defendants, but not for civil litigants, for people, for example, who are fighting to keep their housing. And legal aid of North Carolina is completely overwhelmed, understaffed, and underfunded. So the answer to that is we need more funding, and that needs to come from the legislature. That's not something that the North Carolina Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court can really control.
And to go second, I would completely agree with that statement, particularly on the civil side. It seems to me that all citizens do not, in fact, have equal access to justice. And it seems to me that the problem has gotten worse in recent years. We don't see this so much at the Supreme Court level, but I know they see it more and more at the lower court levels. We are seeing people to an increasing extent represent themselves. And even the best qualified person is at a disadvantage when he or she tries to do that because of the lack of legal training and lack of experience in the court system. To give you some idea of the magnitude of the problem, it's my understanding that legal aid is capable of serving about 400,000 people a year. That is a small portion of the need when you consider the percentage of the state's population that's eligible for their services. They spend lots of time, frankly, telling people that they don't have the capability to help them. The private bar attempts to assist that with pro bono representation, but that's typically something that a person does with only a small amount of his or her time. I think this is one of the real problems that the court system has. If we essentially price ourselves out of the market for average citizens, then people's legal rights cannot be protected, and we need to do something about that. But as Judge Inman says, the courts really don't have the authority to solve that problem on their own.
Thank you, Judge Irvin.
This is Judge Adams. No, I do not believe all citizens have equal access to legal assistance within the judicial system. And the biggest factor, I think, that affects this difference in legal access to the system is economic inequality. People with more money have better outcomes. I mean, that's just simply how it is, unfortunately. So for instance, someone, especially in the criminal justice system, who can afford to pay restitution is going to get a better deal, so to speak, than someone who is unable to pay restitution. Someone who is unable to pay a bond if they're sitting in jail is going to have a worse outcome than someone who is able to get out and assist their attorney and advocate on their behalf. So there is an inequality, and it's related to an economic, I think it's related to an economic difference between different parties or litigants who are in court. And that does not change even within the civil realm. People who can afford an attorney to sue or to represent them in a matter are going to get a better outcome than someone who is unable to afford legal assistance. And so no, all citizens do not have equal access to justice. And as has already been indicated, we have very little control over that. What I can do as a Superior Court judge in a trial court level is I can appoint a public defender to represent someone who is unable to afford an attorney. And or if there's a conflict, then I can also appoint someone outside of the public defender's office. Unfortunately, people who are in the civil realm don't have that luxury, don't have that benefit unless legal aid is able to accept their case. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Adams. Richard Moore, judges, can you see my hand when it's raised up in my little picture frame?
I can now, yes.
Oh, okay.
I need to pay attention, sorry.
That probably means your 1 minute is up, more than likely.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay. I usually go 1.5 minutes, but Richard Moore, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to ask this and you answer it based on the office that you're seeking. So for those who are seeking the office of Supreme Court, what is the most important thing a Supreme Court justice should keep in mind when deciding a case? And if it's for the Court of Appeals, what is the most important thing a judge in the Court of Appeals should keep in mind when deciding a case?
All right, since Judge Inman went first last time, I'll go first this time. It seems to me that the basic task of the justice of the Supreme Court is pretty simple. It's to decide the specific cases that come before us. We don't get to pick the cases that we come before us completely. We've got some control over that, but not completely. So we don't choose what decisions we make. We essentially react to the cases that come before us. In deciding those cases, what we have to do is look first at what the facts are. That's typically found in the trial court, and then determine how the applicable legal rules apply to those facts. We have to do that in such a way that we engage in a careful legal analysis that focuses on what the law is as applied to those facts, that doesn't try to effectuate some kind of political or ideological agenda, that treats everybody equally, and it makes sure that everybody is fairly heard. My experience in the court system over many, many years has been that most litigants can accept outcomes that they don't like. What they can't accept is a sense that nobody listened to them fairly. And so I think the ultimate gauge for the success of any judgeship is, does the judge listen to the party, carefully consider what that party has to say, and then make a decision that is fair and impartial and treats everyone equally?
Okay, thank you.
I'll go next. I think that the biggest, or not the biggest, but the most important factor as a Court of Appeals judge is to fairly and impartially decide cases based on the law. As Justice Irvin indicated, we cannot decide cases based upon any particular personal agenda or even personal or moral beliefs, or even any political ideology. We must, in order to preserve uniformity throughout the courts for everyone and consistency throughout the courts, we must, as judges, fairly and impartially decide cases based upon the law. I mean, that's just putting it just quite simply. That's what we have to do. That's what is the most important. And secondly, when we're doing that, we must treat people with dignity and respect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, the good thing about going last is I can say I agree with everything that Justice Irvin and Judge Adams has said, and none of us is running against one another. The most important thing to keep in mind when deciding a case at the North Carolina Supreme Court, I believe, is that the court's decision is going to affect not just the parties in the case that is before the court, but the Supreme Court of North Carolina's decision in any case is going to affect people all across the state.
If you're a homeowner in North Carolina and you're still paying for electricity, then you could be missing out on free government.
Sounds like we've got a Zoom bomber there. Anyway, the North Carolina Supreme Court decisions affect every single person in the state who may be in the same situation or similar situation to the person in that case. So words really, really matter. And listening and showing respect isn't just showing respect for the parties to that case, but to every person in North Carolina, because those decisions form the fabric of our law and form the precedent that later courts should be following. So it's how very important each case is beyond just the parties to the case.
Thank you, judges. Mr. Artis, your question?
Thank you. So my question is loosely pertaining to public opinion, which I know is not necessarily a determinant of your specific actions in the roles that you're seeking, but I'm trying to get at kind of your reaction to a situation across the country. So the question is, how do you see the role you are seeking as it relates to public opinion in light of the recent Supreme Court ruling for reproductive rights?
This is Judge Adams. I'll go first since we seem to be going in that order. I cannot comment because of as a judge and because of issues that may come before me. I cannot tell you what my opinion is or comment on what other people's opinions are to the degree that it shows my predisposition to rule any particular way. The only thing that I can say is that obviously people are very concerned about what is happening across the country with women's reproductive rights. And we may see that play out in the election in the fall. So to the degree that, people are upset about that, they need to go to the polls and vote.
All right, and let me try to answer it. First of all, let me apologize for the noise you heard. As you could have heard, my phone dinging a second ago, and I was trying to make sure we didn't get any further noise and instead created more, and I apologize for that. All of us are subject to something called the Code of Judicial Conduct, and the Code of Judicial Conduct is a set of rules that govern the behavior of judges. One of those rules is that we cannot comment on cases that are pending anywhere in the court system in North Carolina. It's my understanding that there is a case pending in the Superior Court in North Carolina that directly asks the court to address the question of whether what provisions of the state constitution have to say about the issue that this question is directed to. Because of the Code of Judicial Conduct, I'm not permitted, given that case might come before me at a later time, to comment on this subject. I know that's kind of frustrating for people who are trying to figure out what they think of us, but the rules exist to make sure that people not only have a fair hearing, but believe that they have a fair hearing. And if we were to start commenting on issues of that nature, then in a case came before us later, the perception would be that we could not fairly and impartially decide it. And so I apologize for not really answering your question, but I wanted to explain why I wasn't answering in the way that I can perhaps help you understand the rules that we are subject to.
And Mr. Artis, I think you'll be, and everyone probably equally disappointed, but hopefully understanding why I, just like Justice Ervin and Judge Adams, can't make a comment about public opinion regarding the recent decision in Dobbs. But what I can say generally is that people might think that because they're not lawyers, they can't understand what's written in a court opinion. And I recommend to everyone reading the majority opinion and the dissenting opinion in Dobbs, because some of the issues that are discussed in those opinions mirror the issues that we are talking about in terms of protecting our courts from partisan politics and making sure that we stay true to the rule of law.
That's a judge.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And what I want to do is take this moment to pause and thank Judge Jackson for joining. Just so you know, we started a little early because we ended the last session a little early, and these were already on, but we were committed to staying on until you arrived to ensure that we could get all of the panelists' questions answered. So what we're going to do is the last question will come from Diana Powell, but if the other judges will give us the leeway and the opportunity, we'll go back through and have Mr. Artis, Mr. Moore, and Ms. Mbonu ask their questions for Mr. Jackson.
And I don't mind waiting if you want to go ahead and do your final question, and then you can do all mine at one time after the other judges move on. It's fine with me, whatever works for you.
Perfect. I think that is very helpful. What we'll do is we'll go ahead and have Ms. Powell ask her final question. And I would tell you what order you're coming in, but the judges that are on the panel with you took that out of my hands about 5 minutes ago and just started going on their own. So they'll tell you who's going to answer first, next, and anything after that.
Sounds good.
I am teasing judges.
That's perfectly all right.
I've been sufficiently disruptive with the dog barking on my general technological incompetence that you can say anything you want to.
Ms. Powell, if you will go with your question, please.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, everyone. My question is, what are your views on the need for more diversity on the bench and how the court treats members of different races? And also, do you believe in second chances?
May I start? I think I'm going to start.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I'm going to take your second question first and say, yes, I believe in second chances. And I also believe that when people have adequate access to legal counseling and legal representation, there are opportunities for second chances in our justice system. But it's a matter of people being able to access that counseling and representation. And in terms of diversity on the bench, I will note that Judge Gail Adams, who is running for a seat on the Court of Appeals, there are 15 judges on the Court of Appeals where I serve. And for most of the time I served there for the last 8 years, there was just one person of color who was another judge. For a very short time, we had 2 Black judges. but for most of the time, just 1 out of 15. And Judge Adams is a very experienced trial judge and would be a great addition to the Court of Appeals. I think that we try to treat everyone fairly and equally, but I do believe that the more diverse representation that we have on our appellate courts, the more likelihood people are going to bring a diverse background and insight and understanding that I, as a privileged white woman, not going to have. And I do my best and I consult with my colleagues, but we need more diversity.
I want to step in at this time. Thank you so much, Judge Inman. I want to step in at this time and welcome John Tyson to the panel discussion and offer the same response that I gave to Judge Jackson, in that we started a little early because the other session ended up early, but want to give each one of the panelists an opportunity to ask that question. We will give an opportunity. I was on mute. We will give an opportunity for each one of you all to give us a 1-minute introduction. And if you can see, I am Mariana Polk Stewart, the chairperson of the RWCA Impact. And if you see my square on your system, then you'll see that I have my hand raised in the upper left-hand corner. That means your 1 minute is up. And so we ask that you adhere to those specifics. But I want to take the time now to give an opportunity for you all to give a 1-minute introduction, and then followed by the questions from Ms. Mbono, Mr. Moore, Cranston Artis, and then Diana Powell in the last question. For those, Judge Irvin and Inman, Judge Adams, you are absolutely welcome to stay on. You're absolutely welcome to stay on. There's no more questions that we have for you. I want to give the opportunity, if you'd like, you have an opportunity to send a 1-page document to the email address RWCA to be considered during our deliberation next week. Again, I want to thank you all so much. It absolutely cannot be easy, the work that you do, and ensuring that our democracy is upheld at the court level, that our 3 branches of government are separated as outlined in our Constitution, and that equity across the board is within your jurisdiction. So on behalf of RWCA, thank you all so very much. Yes, ma'am.
Before you move on, can I have an opportunity to answer that last question? And I don't know if Judge Irvin wanted to weigh in as well. Being an African-American female, of course, you know, I do view diversity as a necessity because of the different, as Judge Inman indicated, just a different viewpoint, because of the different backgrounds, the diverse background and understanding, I think helps us as judges when there's more diversity and you bring that voice to discussions, because when Court of Appeals judges rule, they rule in panels of 3s. And so having a diverse panel to provide input, I think benefits us all. And yes, I absolutely believe in second chances, and more than that it takes for some people. Thank you.
And I wasn't cutting you off right then. I was just giving an introduction to the other 2. So once you finish answering, you are welcome to stay on or drop off. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
And if I could answer the last one as well, and I'm going to take it in the same order that Judge Adams did. I have all 3 of the courts or semi-courts that I've served on have been courts where decisions were made by groups of people. And so I've had plenty of opportunities to watch small group decision-making dynamics. And I can tell you that from my own observation, that having a decision made by a diverse group makes for a better decision, because all of us, regardless of who we are, come to questions that we have to decide or to act upon from different perspectives. And it always amazes me how, when I sit down with my colleagues and have done that in the past, I hear them say things that enriched the quality of the decision that we made, caused me to see perspectives that I might not have seen otherwise. And so I think decisions made by diverse groups are better decisions than decisions that are not made by diverse groups. Secondly, the second part of the question was, do I believe in second chances? Of course, I believe in second chances. The decisions that we have to make primarily are based upon the application of legal rules to particular sets of facts. When you get to the appellate courts, for better or worse, there's not much opportunity to exercise discretion with respect to the way in which particular cases are decided. Instead, we have to look at the facts, apply the law, and make that decision. However, as a human being, I know that none of us are the worst thing we ever did. And so I certainly believe in second chances, and think that that's something that we all need to keep in mind. And again, thank you for having the three of us here with you this evening, and I very much appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. Judge Tyson, Candidate Jackson, would you like to go ahead and answer those questions?
Do you want me to go through my introduction first, or answer the question?
Well, we'll just have you answer the last question as these other judges are on, and then we'll start at the top and do the introductions.
Okay, well, good afternoon, good evening. My name is John Tyson, and I currently serve as one of your elected judges on the North Carolina Court of Appeals. And I have served, I was first elected in the year 2000. I'm a North Carolina native, raised on a farm. I think the question is, do I believe in second chances? My first job out of college was as a state probation parole officer. And if you know about probation parole, that is a second chance. That is an opportunity for someone with a limited criminal record to retain their freedom and to pay their debt to society under supervision of a probation officer. So I worked in New Hanover and Columbus County in that role, and I only left there to go to law school. So I have experience in second chances, and that I was supervising young men and women who had violated the law, but was given that second chance to retain their freedom. In terms of diversity, I have served with over 50 judges on the Court of Appeals. I served with Justice Timmons Goodson. I served with Judge Bryant. I served with Judge Wynn. I currently serve with Judge Gore. I serve with Judge Biggs. I've served with a wide variety of judges, male and female, from all backgrounds. I come from a rural background. I come from a transactions-oriented background, real property, wills, estates, and trust. So that is the diversity I bring from my experience, and that we have very few people in our court who bring that level of experience to the court. So diversity goes far beyond race and sex. Diversity goes to experience. Diversity goes to education. Diversity goes to performance and transparency. And that's what I bring to the court.
Thank you, Judge Tyson. Kennedy.
I'm sorry, I cannot hear you.
Oh, I was thanking you, Judge Tyson, and asking for Candidate Jackson to respond.
Oh, thank you.
Answer the question.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, of course, I believe in second chances. I'm a little bit different then some of the candidates and the judges, you know, of course, we can't talk about how we would rule on issues that might come before the court, but I do have 12 years of experience in the General Assembly. I've appeared before RWCA before. I have a voting record that anybody's welcome to look at, and I think it represents that I have voted for banning the box in employment. I have voted numerous times to expanding our expungement statutes. You know, it used to be only certain offenses were eligible for expungement, and that was greatly expanded over the last 12, 15 years. Things such as automatic expungement of dismissals and not guilty verdicts that we passed, you know, they're now working on an AOC and making a reality. All those things were very important in recognizing people deserve a second chance. And I think Justice Ervin said it well about not being defined by your worst moment in life. As far as diversity, of course, I support diversity. I'm very proud of having led the Democratic caucus in the House for 4 years. We did our first racial equity training when I was chair of the House caucus, to make sure that everybody understood how important diversity was, and not everybody comes from the same life experiences as everybody else. I also was a small town practitioner for 25 years with a very diverse client base. I tell people all the time, I've been paid in cash, I've been paid in vegetables. You know, you take your clients as they come in and needing that legal advice, and I represented people on the court appointed list. I just represented people from a diverse array of life experiences, classes, races, sexes. You know, I represented everybody. As far as an employer, I've also been very diverse in my hiring practices. Was always proud of that as a small town lawyer, having a very diverse staff. Continue that on in the General Assembly and the hiring decisions I got to make, and now on the Court of Appeals.
Thank you so much. Again, what we want to do at this point is allow Judge Tyson and candidate Representative Jackson to give us a 1-minute introduction. And then if Ms. Bonu will begin with her question, along with, after which was Mr. Moore, Mr. Artis, and you just answered Ms. Diana Powell's question. I'd appreciate that. So Representative Jackson, a 1-minute introduction to you, sir, from you, and then Judge Tyson to follow.
Thank you. Judge Darren Jackson, I currently serve in the Court of Appeals, born and raised in Eastern Wake County, public schools, educated, went to Carolina, Duke Law School, returned to Zebulon, small town practice, 25 years. During that time, I was elected to the General Assembly representing Knightdale, Wendell, and Zebulon in parts of Garner for 12 years. In December of 2020, Governor Cooper appointed me to the position I now hold on the North Carolina Court of Appeals, and I am running in November for seat 11 for a full 8-year term. And I appreciate your support, and I apologize if I was late. My daddy always told me on time was 5 minutes early. I was 30 minutes early tonight, and I still wasn't on time.
That is okay. Judge Tyson, if you'll go next, we've also been joined by Carolyn Jennings Thompson. So you're right on time. Thank you so very much.
Again, yes, thank you. I had submitted a photograph and a 1-page statement, and I hope that that will be made available to the members of the committee earlier today. And I'm sorry that our video is not working, but I hope the voice is coming through fine. Again, I am Judge John Tyson. I currently serve on the Court of Appeals. I'm running for seat 10 for re-election to my seat. I am a native of Cumberland County, a native of Fayetteville, North Carolina. I too am public school educated, UNC Wilmington, University of Virginia. I received, after I finished law school at Campbell University, I earned an MBA from Duke, and then a master's in judicial process at the University of Virginia. So I have ruled on more than 8,000 cases. I have more than 3,000 opinions for my tenure on the court. I have a very consistent record. And so I guess in closing on my introduction, I think fairness and impartiality is the least expectation that we have of anyone seeking to be a judge. What is above that is experience, education, performance, and accountability. And my record shows that I bring all of those to the voters. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Tyson. Ms. Thompson? Jennings Thompson.
Good evening.
Good evening. If you could give us a 1-minute introduction, I am so sorry. We're going to give a 1-minute introduction and then we'll go right into our questions from our panelists.
I want to thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. My name is Carolyn Thompson, candidate for seat number 8, North Carolina Court of Appeals. I am 25 years in on judicial and legal experience that I'm bringing to the ballot. Prior district court judge, superior court judge, trial litigator. And I kind of heard the tail end of the other questions regarding diversity. My invitation had 8:30 on it. So I'd just like to chime in that, yes, I do believe in second chances. Actually, I serve as a volunteer teen court judge right now for who get in trouble in the community or in the school system, and they are given this diversion program opportunity so that they're not caught up in the pipeline to the criminal justice system. Regarding diversity, as Jackson mentioned, I too was a small town attorney, and my office reflected the community. That was very important to me so that clients understood that it was about fairness and impartiality and open to all who are in the community. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. And let me again clarify, this forum was at 8:30. And so the forum right before this one ended very early, and 3 of our judges were already in as attendees. So we began the question and answer, and then knew that at 8:30 that those that received the invitation, when they came in, we would stay open. This forum would stay open until every candidate that gave that responded yes to our invite would be a part of the question and answer. So for those, you're coming in right at a little bit before your appointed order. We just went on and started a little early and we're still giving you the opportunity. So again, thank you all so very much for this for participating in our forum. Again, what we'll do is we'll start Marquita Mbonu, begin our question and answer, followed by Richard Moore, Cranston Artist, and yes, Ms. Thompson, you ended with Diana Powell asked the last question, and each one of you all got in on the last question, so I absolutely appreciate that. So by way of introductions, I am Mariana Polk Stewart. I am the president of the RWCA Impact. We have tonight Marquita Mbonu, that's also a member, and Cranston Artist, a member of the Impact. Diana Powell, President and CEO of Justice Serve, along with the RWCA member, and Richard Moore is a member of the Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity. So I thank all of those that are here tonight as panelists to help, and along with one of our partners, the North Carolina Black Alliance, that is hosting our Zoom meeting on tonight. So without further ado, Ms. Mbonu, if you would begin with your initial question.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, candidates. Thank you for joining us this evening. So my question is, do you believe that all citizens have adequate access to legal help and the legal system? If not, what can be done to provide wider and better access? And maybe Judge Jackson can begin.
Yes, thank you. So yes, do I think North Carolinians have equal access to legal representation, access to the courts? No, You know, there wasn't a day in my practice where I didn't probably get a call from someone needing legal representation or legal advice who could not afford to hire an attorney. And you only qualify for court-appointed attorneys for certain offenses, and you certainly don't get any help with small claims court, or maybe you can get some pro bono legal assistance for domestic if there's domestic violence, but if there's not and it's just custody of children, you don't. And so we as lawyers all need to do a better job of trying to do our part for pro bono service to those who cannot afford it. Our court system needs to do a better job, and it is attempting to do so. I don't want to make it sound like they're turning their backs on folks, but there's only so much they can do. But there have been things that the AOC has started to do, like forms that you can fill out on the computer if you have access, that will help you prepare your documents so that you can go file them on yourself. I probably practiced in 40, 45 counties in this state, and I can tell you that the clerk's office was very helpful in some counties to people who needed, you know, who didn't know exactly what they needed to do and what they didn't. And in other counties, you were just out of luck if you didn't have the exact right paperwork or anything like that. And so we all need to do a better job. As a judge on the Court of Appeals, it is my job to review each case, no matter how well the lawyers argued the case, no whether or not you are pro se representing yourself or you have a lawyer, but to make sure that there was no error committed down in the trial court in your case. And so sometimes that means we get cases that are appealed to us that don't have the best legal arguments or have not been developed in the best written briefs. And it's my job to see through that, to do the research if I need to do the research that wasn't done by the lawyers, to make sure that person gets a fair and equitable day in court.
Judge Jackson, thank you so very much for your response. Judge Tyson?
Yes, when I was in private practice, there was a list that the North Carolina Bar Association maintained for legal assistance, free pro bono legal assistance. And it was called the lawyer referral system. And what we agreed to do was to offer a free consultation for any referral that came from the Bar Association. I gave hundreds of clients who came in a free legal advice as far as the problem. So I was very proud to participate in that. Can we do better on legal representation? Yes. Obviously, if you're charged with a serious criminal offense and cannot afford an attorney will be provided for you. On the appeals court, we have the appellate defender who will represent folks who cannot afford their own attorney. So both of those programs are in place. One thing that we have done at the Court of Appeals to try to increase legal services to those who can afford it is we have set up a program where if someone is not represented, we will try to get an attorney, and this is more in civil cases than in criminal cases. We have a list of lawyers who've agreed to volunteer their times for folks who do not have an appellate attorney in a civil case. And we've been very successful in getting pro bono appellate representation from that program. So that's something that we put in while I was on the court. I voted for it. I've encouraged it. I was the first one to actually bring in an attorney to represent an unrepresented party. So can we do better? Yes. Are we doing, if you get more attorneys to sign up for the program and agree to volunteer, then that will make legal services more available. And I'm very proud to have done that when I was in private practice.
Thank you, Judge Tyson. Ms. Thompson?
I think as long as poverty exists in our community, there will be an inadequate access to the legal system. And it isn't always just because they can't afford an attorney. It could be something as simple as what we consider as simple as driving to court, the absence of transportation or means to pay someone to get them there on time for court without being called and failed for not appearing on time, or it could be not being able to pay the court costs and fines, even though you know you've been pulled for a traffic matter, so you just don't show. So while I agree with the prior statements about the attorneys and the access to legal representation, when you are struggling trying to make a decision about milk and paying someone to keep your child so you can go to court, that too will lend toward an unfair or inadequate legal representation. And the answer to that would be to always kind of ask the second question instead of assuming that the defendant or the accused just didn't show up for whatever reason. And I know that as a district court judge and as an attorney, it was very prevalent in Henderson or Vance County, the low wealth counties, when this would often occur.
Thank you, Judge Thompson. Mr. Moore?
Okay, so each one of you are candidates for the NC Court of Appeals. What is the most important thing a justice should keep in mind when deciding the case at the appellate level? And we can start with we'll go in reverse alphabetical order. So we'll start with Judge Tyson first.
The Court of Appeals is what we call an appeal of right court. That means the vast majority of all appeals from the administrative agencies, from civil cases and criminal cases, comes to the Court of Appeals first. There are some exceptions that go directly to our Supreme Court, but the vast majority of cases come to our court. We will decide anywhere between 1,500 and 1,800 cases a year. And I think over 85% of all the appeals end with the Court of Appeals. So we don't get to choose the cases we take. We take civil, criminal, administrative, workers' compensations cases, employment law cases. They all come to our court. The most important thing is the ability to analyze the facts of the law, to have the experience and education needed. I believe justice delayed is justice denied. Every year, I have filed an annual report of my activities. It's on my website, judgejohntyson.com. And I report back to the voters and the citizens every year my performance on the court. Our policy allows 90 days to file an opinion. In the last 7 years, my average time has been below 30 days between when the case was heard and when the opinion was filed. I don't think these cases get better with age. And by the time we get them, people have been waiting for a year for a decision. So once we meet in whole court and the three of us decide the case, then it's up to the authoring judge to get that work done. And I'm very proud of that record, that transparency and that performance. And that's what I offer to the voters.
Thank you. Ms. Thompson, Judge Thompson.
The first thing to consider, or the first thing that I would say, is that recognize that we don't have the advantage of a trial court to take on the emotion of the witnesses, the testimony provided, and don't come in with an idea that we can change those things and change the facts. To stick to the record that's before us and not try to curb it in a manner that would fit the box, if you will, if the information is not there. To be cognizant that we can't tweak and we can't change, but look for errors in law, look for those things that we are required to do, and not try to assume that someone intended or tried to bring to the Court of Appeals attention a matter or a fact or an argument. And with that, then we can remain impartial and fair and also bring the judicial experience of managing docketing, managing caseloads, and managing the load that's before us.
Okay, thank you. Judge Jackson.
You know, I agree that it's important that we do the job in a very timely and transparent fashion. And it's always important that we recognize that although we have 12 cases every 2 weeks, that to the people that are involved in these cases, the parties, that this is their case and their lives are up in the air waiting on a final decision. I also remember that when I disagree with the other 2 judges on the panel, that, you know, I should write a dissent. And when you write a dissent, that means the Supreme Court will have to make the ultimate decision. They have to hear the case. And so if I disagree with the other 2 judges on the panel, I take the time. It's more work for us, but I write a dissent. You know, I also say something about being on the Court of Appeals. You know, it should be a nonpartisan job, and you should be immune from public opinion or public pressure or political pressure. If you are scared of giving a new trial to someone charged of murder or child abuse, domestic violence, when they didn't receive a fair trial below, then you're in the wrong line of work. You shouldn't be on the Court of Appeals, because that's our job. If the trial court didn't follow the law and there were errors that were prejudicial to the defendant in the trial below, then we send it back. And we're supposed to make those decisions and not worry about what the political results are going to be, or public, what the newspaper might write about us. And so I think that's important as well, is that you focus on those facts and the law and not worry about all the external stuff.
Thank you.
Mr. Artis, thank you so much. Mr. Artis.
Yes, sorry, I had a momentary issue with the keyboard. So, okay, where are we? So, my question kind of speaks to voter education. I feel like judge positions seem to be the least understood by voters, breeding voter apathy. What would you say to educate voters on the nuance of the role you are seeking?
Let's go right to the middle. Start with Judge Tyson, then Judge Thompson, and end with Judge Jackson.
Okay, as I understand the question is the voters tend to know the least about the judges as opposed to some of the other folks who might be running for governor or state house, state senate, Congress. And what can we do to better inform the voters? North Carolina has been at the forefront. Every registered voter gets a judicial voter guide of the candidates who are seeking election to the Court of Appeals and to the Supreme Court. That each of us is given the opportunity to submit a 200-word answer along with a background and biography and a photograph to educate the voters. So that is sent to every registered voter in North Carolina before early voting starts. I think North Carolina may be unique in the nation, providing that information about the judges on the ballot. I think every judge on this call maintains a website, maintains a Facebook page, maintains a Twitter account, maintains a LinkedIn account. Every opinion the Court of Appeals published or filed its opinions today. 5 of those opinions are mine. I put those out on my Facebook and my Twitter account every filing period to educate the voters. So there's a lot of information out there electronically. And of course, the voter education guide, the voter guide, is unique and gives a lot of information about all of us who are running for the appellate courts. Thank you.
I'm sorry. when I'm trying to explain to the average person at the gas pump or in the Walmart line what this is, I try to just keep it basic. So for voter education, if you're not engaged or have reason to come into the courthouse for any reason, and I think candidate for U.S. Senate said it best, most people don't come into the courtroom unless it's on their worst day. So some of them would decide that, well, I don't know any of these judges. I don't know what they do. I don't have any dealings with them, and completely skip through it and not vote, just leave it blank. So it is our job as candidates to make sure we educate them with what it is the court does. And so I try to keep it very basic. For example, a couple of weekends ago, I was out canvassing and walked into a barber shop and tried to explain as a candidate of Court of Appeals. And he said, well, what is that? And what do they do? And then when you walk the layperson up to the point of understanding in their aha moment that the most powerful thing you can say in a district court or trial court level is, I appeal. And when you make it that simple, it resonates, and they will remember that when they're going to the poll. So while we in the legal community have a full understanding, and we may get lawyers to, run our ads or push our names, I think it's important to reach the households that wouldn't ordinarily know what this level of court is, and just have a conversation.
So I guess it's my turn. So it is extremely difficult. So I get asked all the time on the campaign trail, how do we get people excited about voting for our judges or turning out for the judges? And the answer is that we really can't, because we are not allowed to talk about how we would rule. I mean, that's not what you want from a judge. You want a judge who's going to be fair and consider the facts and the law of that particular case. And so it makes it really hard to campaign, especially statewide, in really, relatively speaking, not a lot of money raised compared to what U.S. Senator, governor, things like that run. And so my the way I try to do it is try to accept every invitation I can to turn out for forums such as this, so that I can answer questions and talk about what we do on a day in and day out basis, and have people make decisions based on more than whose name appears first, or how your name sounds, or whether you have a Republican or a Democrat beside your name. All those reasons that that are not good reasons for why people should be selected to be on the Court of Appeals. I try to talk to people and answer questions. I'm also very active on social media, putting things out, but it is hard. It is very hard to tell people why they should be excited about turning out for our judges until a big decision is issued by the North Carolina Supreme Court or the U.S. Supreme Court. People tend to pay attention to those. They read it in the paper, and then they want to ask you about it, and we can't respond. We can't answer those questions. But the judges, the court system is very important, whether you commit a crime or not. We do civil cases, we do administrative hearings, appeals, workers' compensation. It is so much more than criminal court. And it has a chance, adoptions, child custody. It's unlikely that you would go your lifetime without being touched by the court system or having to appear in court system or as a witness or a victim. And it's hard to make people understand it's so much more, and it's so important that people take the time to get educated. And so when you have a forum like this, that's why it's so important that we turn out, answer the people's questions, and then they can make a better informed, more educated decision.
Thank you so much to all the candidates, judges. We appreciate you taking the time and the opportunity to come and share with us on this evening. Again, we offer the opportunity, as Judge Tyson mentioned earlier, that you can submit a one-pager to our website and ask this committee or the impact deliberates on next week for our endorsement process, that you submit that one-pager, and it will be disseminated along with the question and answers of this forum to all of those individuals that serve on the RWCA Impact Committee, Endorsement Committee, to share. My hats are off to each one of you again as you go into those courtrooms and have to balance philosophy versus law versus equity and diversification, and inclusion. So thank you again for taking the opportunity on tonight to be a part of this forum. Thank our partners, the North Carolina Black Women's Empowerment Network, the North Carolina Black Alliance, Justice Served, a representative from the Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. To the panelists, thank you so much for taking your time out this evening, and you all enjoy the rest of your evening. This ends our forum for this evening in this portion of our Candidates Forum. Have a great rest of the night.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. We appreciate it.
Good night.
Y'all have a good night.
Thank you and good night.